The invitation arrived in a velvet envelope, black, embossed with silver lettering. It smelled like money and bad decisions. Scarlett Ashworth held it between two fingers like it might bite her. She knew that handwriting, the aggressive slant, the pretentious loops. Garrett. 5 years of silence, and now this. She stood in the foyer of her Seattle penthouse, rain streaking down the windows behind her. The city lights blurred into rivers of gold and white. 47 floors below, the world moved without knowing that up here. In this marble palace she had built from nothing, a ghost from the past had just knocked on her door. She tore the seal open. Heavy cardstock fell into her palm. Mr. Garrett Lucas Thornwood III and Miss Melody Sinclair Davies request the honor of your presence at their union. The Hartwell Estate, Boston, November 23rd. A smaller note slipped out, handwritten on cream-colored paper. Scarlett's jaw tightened as she read it. Scar, I know we ended rough, but I wanted you to see how everything worked out. Come have dinner on me. I remember how much you loved free food back when we were scraping by. No hard feelings, G. Scarlett read it twice, then a third time. Her fingers trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the sheer audacity of the words. He thought she was still scraping by. He thought she was still the exhausted veterinary assistant he had abandoned in that tiny apartment in Portland, crying into her ramen because she could not afford real groceries. He thought she was still the woman he had left sleeping on the floor because he had taken the mattress. The audacity was almost impressive. She walked to the kitchen island, the marble cold beneath her fingertips. She poured herself a glass of Bordeaux from a bottle that cost more than her entire grocery budget used to be for a month. The wine was dark and rich, like blood, like revenge, like the life she had built from the ruins of his betrayal. Elena walked into the kitchen, her heels clicking against the marble floor. She stopped when she saw Scarlett's expression. Elena Chen was petite but fierce, with sharp cheekbones and sharper business instincts. She had been with Scarlett since the company was 3 employees operating out of a converted garage, eating cold pizza for dinner and dreaming impossible dreams. Who died? Nobody yet. Scarlett handed her the invitation, but someone is about to wish they had. Elena was Scarlett's CFO, also her best friend. Also the woman who had helped her build Ashworth Veterinary Innovations from a desperate dream into a $200 million empire. She read the invitation, her eyebrows climbing higher with each line. Garrett Thornwood. Elena whistled low. The guy who told you that you were holding him back from his potential. The very same. The guy who secretly took out loans in your name, before leaving and stuck you with $40,000 in debt. Scarlett's smile was razor-thin. That would be him. The guy who told everyone at your divorce, hearing that you were mentally unstable and could not handle money. The guy who made you cry in front of a judge. Scarlett's grip tightened on her wine glass. The crystal was cold against her palm. That too. And now he wants you to watch him marry some society princess at the Hartwell estate. Elena looked up, her eyes gleaming with dangerous curiosity. You are going, right? Scarlett walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked downtown Seattle. The city glittered beneath her like a sea of stars. Every light represented someone's dream. Every building was someone's empire. 5 years ago, she had been drowning in Garrett's wreckage, counting pennies, wondering if she would ever breathe again. Now she owned buildings that touched clouds. Now she employed 300 people. Now she saved animal lives every single day. He wants a show. Scarlett turned back to Elena. Let us give him one. Elena grinned. Her teeth were very white. Her eyes were very bright. I was hoping you would say that. I have been waiting 5 years for this moment. To understand why this invitation cut so deep, you had to understand the divorce. Garrett Thornwood had been charming in the way hurricanes were charming, devastatingly beautiful and completely destructive. They had met in college at the University of Oregon during her sophomore year. He was pre-law, destined for greatness if you asked him. She was studying veterinary medicine, passionate about animals, about healing, about making the world a little bit better one creature at a time. Their first date was at a coffee shop near campus. Rain streaked the windows while he talked for 3 hours about his plans, his ambitions, his certain future success. His voice was rich and confident. His eyes sparkled when he described the empire he would build. She had listened, captivated by his certainty. She mistook his arrogance for vision. She mistook his dismissiveness for sophistication. She mistook his cruelty for honesty. He made her feel small in ways she did not recognize until later. The comments disguised as jokes. "You are really eating that?" When she reached for a second slice of pizza. The subtle dismissals of her career. "It is cute that you want to help puppies. Maybe someday you can be a real doctor." The way he spent their money on his networking events while she ate peanut butter for dinner. Appearances matter, Scar. You would not understand. You have never understood. She had loved him anyway. She had believed in his dreams because he made her feel like believing in her own was foolish. Like her dreams were small and his were worthy. Like she was lucky to be chosen by someone so obviously destined for greatness. When he left, it was with surgical precision. He had already secured funding for his sports management startup. He had already hidden the assets. He had already opened credit cards in her name and maxed them out on things she never saw. He had been planning his exit for months, maybe years, while she was still trying to make the marriage work. While she was still bringing him coffee in bed. While she was still believing his lies. The divorce papers called it irreconcilable differences. Scarlett called it financial homicide. "I never loved you," he had told her on the day he moved out. His boxes were already packed. His new apartment was already leased. A new girl was already waiting. "I just needed someone to pay the bills while I got started. Thanks for that, by the way. You were very useful." She had stood in the empty living room, surrounded by the furniture they could not afford, drowning in debt she did not know existed. The walls had felt like they were closing in. The air had tasted like ash. That night she slept on the floor. She did not own a bed anymore. He had taken the mattress. He had taken everything. She had spent 6 months sleeping on her sister's couch in Portland. Rachel had never asked for rent. Rachel had never asked questions. Rachel had simply held her while she cried and promised that someday things would be better. Scarlett had worked 3 jobs. Morning shift at a coffee shop, serving lattes to people who did not see her. Afternoon hours at a veterinary clinic, doing the work she loved for barely minimum wage. Evening gigs walking dogs for wealthy people who could not be bothered to spend time with their own pets. She clawed her way out of debt $1 at a time. She ate rice and beans. She wore clothes from thrift stores. She took cold showers to save money on heating. She learned to survive. She learned to fight. And then she had an idea. A simple idea. A device that made administering medication to animals easier. Less stressful for the pet. Less dangerous for the veterinarian. She had watched clinic after clinic struggle with the same problem. Frightened animals, bitten technicians, incomplete treatments. There had to be a better way. She had sketched the solution on napkins during her lunch breaks. She had built the prototype with borrowed tools and scrounged materials in her sister's garage. She had tested it on the clinic's most difficult patients. A terrified cat named Whiskers who had bitten 3 technicians. A massive Rottweiler named Thor who trembled at the sight of a needle. It worked. It actually worked. A venture capitalist had seen her pitch at a small business competition in Portland. The room had been half empty. The prize money had been modest. But Scarlett had stood on that stage in her best thrift store blazer, the one with the slightly frayed cuffs that she had hidden with careful positioning. She had practiced her presentation 100 times in the mirror. She had nearly vomited from nerves before walking on stage. But she had walked on stage anyway. The VC, a woman named Margaret Chen with silver hair and sharp eyes and the kind of presence that made everyone in the room pay attention, had written her a check that changed everything. $200,000. Seed money. Faith. Not bad for someone who cannot handle money. Margaret had said with a knowing smile, "Go prove that bastard wrong." Scarlett had. Now Ashworth Veterinary Innovations supplied equipment to clinics in 47 countries. Their latest product, a non-invasive diagnostic scanner that could detect diseases earlier than any existing technology, had just been approved by the FDA. The deal with the Morrison Hospital Group alone was worth $90 million. But Scarlett kept a low profile. No social media. No magazine covers. No interviews with business journalists who wanted to write about the self-made woman who had risen from nothing. She let her work speak for itself. She let Alina be the public face of the company when media presence was required. To Garrett, she was invisible, just as he had always wanted her to be. The week before the wedding, Scarlett flew to New York. Not for shopping, although shopping happened. She went to see Marcus Cole, her personal attorney and occasional co-conspirator. Marcus had helped her navigate the aftermath of Garrett's destruction. He knew where all the bodies were buried, metaphorically speaking. He had been there when she thought about pressing charges and talked her out of it. He had been there when she decided to build instead of sue. His office occupied the 32nd floor of a glass tower in Midtown Manhattan. The views were spectacular, stretching from the Hudson to the East River. The furniture was expensive, all leather and dark wood. The man himself was tall, impeccably dressed, with the relaxed confidence of someone who won more cases than he lost. So Marcus leaned back in his leather chair, his silver cufflinks catching the afternoon light streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. The Thornwood wedding. Tell me you are not just going to watch. Scarlett smiled. The expression did not reach her eyes. I did some research. Garrett's sports management company is bleeding money. His biggest client, that basketball player who was supposed to be his ticket to the big leagues, Marcus Williams, just left for a competitor. He has been trying to secure investors for 6 months with no luck. His credit lines are maxed. His staff has not been paid in 2 months. And the bride. Melody Sinclair Davies. Her father is Reginald Sinclair, the pharmaceutical magnate. Marcus whistled. Sinclair Medical. They just acquired 3 generic drug manufacturers. Market cap of $12 billion last time I checked. He is one of the richest men in New England. Scarlett nodded. Garrett thinks he is marrying into a bailout. He has been telling people that Reginald is going to invest heavily in Thornwood Sports Management as a wedding gift. $10 million, supposedly. Enough to save his company and launch him into the big time. Is he? That is where it gets interesting. Scarlett pulled a folder from her bag. The leather was soft. The documents inside were meticulously organized. Sinclair Medical just signed a massive partnership agreement with a veterinary pharmaceutical company. They are expanding into animal medicine. The deal closes next month. Marcus's eyes narrowed. His legal instincts were humming. What company? Scarlett's smile widened. Ashworth Veterinary Innovations. You are kidding. I met with Reginald Sinclair 3 weeks ago at his office in Boston. He is lovely, very sharp, very thorough, very impressed with our diagnostic scanner, very interested in exclusive distribution rights for all of North America and Europe. We talked for 4 hours. He took me to lunch at his club. Marcus started laughing. The sound filled his corner office, echoing off the glass. So you are walking into your ex-husband's wedding as the most important business partner his father-in-law has ever had. Something like that. He does not know. Garrett has not researched me since the divorce. He probably thinks I am still giving flea baths for minimum wage. Scarlett stood, smoothing her blazer. Let us keep it that way until the reception. Marcus shook his head, still grinning. "What are you going to wear?" Scarlett's expression turned predatory, something unforgettable. The dress was custom-made by a designer named Isabelle Devereux, who typically worked with movie stars and European royalty. Scarlett had flown to Paris for the fitting. The consultation had taken 2 hours. The fitting had taken 4 more. The adjustments had taken another 2 sessions. The result was perfect. Deep crimson silk that moved like liquid fire. A neckline that suggested confidence without revealing too much. A back that plunged dangerously low, implying power and daring. A slit that demanded attention without begging for it. The color was deliberate. Red for danger. Red for passion. Red for the blood Garrett had tried to drain from her life. Red for the phoenix rising from the ashes. It cost more than Garrett's first car. It cost more than the monthly rent on that apartment where she had cried on the kitchen floor. It cost exactly what it should have, which was enough to make a statement that could not be ignored. Scarlett studied herself in the mirror of her hotel's suite on the morning of the wedding. The Ritz-Carlton in Boston, the presidential suite. She had booked it because she could, because 5 years ago she had slept on a couch with springs that dug into her back, dreaming of a day when she would not have to worry about money ever again. The woman looking back was not the girl Garrett had known. This woman had edges. This woman had teeth. This woman had survived and thrived and returned to burn down the house he thought he had escaped to. "Ready." Alina appeared in the doorway, devastating in black Valentino. The dress was sleek, modern, expensive. She looked like she could buy and sell everyone at that wedding, which she probably could. Almost, Scarlett fastened her grandmother's ruby earrings. The only thing of value Garrett had not managed to steal. He had tried to take them during the divorce, claiming they were marital property. She had fought him for months. She had won. "Do we have the car?" Alina grinned, downstairs, waiting. They descended to the lobby in the gilded elevator. The staff watched them pass with barely concealed curiosity. 2 women who moved like they owned the world. 2 women who did, in fact, own a significant portion of it. The doorman opened the main entrance with visible appreciation for what he was witnessing. Parked at the curb was not a taxi or an Uber or even a standard limousine. It was a vintage 1959 Rolls-Royce Silver Cloud, pearl white with chrome details that gleamed like captured starlight. The curves were elegant. The presence was undeniable. A uniformed chauffeur stood at attention beside the rear door. "Where did you find this?" Scarlett asked. Alina shrugged elegantly. "I know people who know people. If Garrett wants theater, we provide the full production." They slid into the back seat. The leather was soft as butter. The interior smelled of luxury and history and the kind of money that did not need to prove itself. The drive to the Hartwell estate took 40 minutes through Boston's autumn traffic. The roads narrowed as they left the city. The trees thickened, blazing with red and gold. Old money did not advertise itself. It simply existed, ancient and impenetrable, hiding behind stone walls and iron gates. The estate appeared through the foliage like something from a Gothic novel. Gray stone that had stood for 2 centuries. Ivy-covered walls that whispered of secrets. Gardens that had been maintained by generations of groundskeepers. It was beautiful in the way museums were beautiful. Impressive but slightly cold. Guest shuttles lined the main drive. Most visitors were being transported from a parking lot near the entrance like cattle being herded to slaughter. Only the most important arrivals were permitted to approach the main doors directly. The guard at the gate looked at the Rolls-Royce, then at Scarlett's face through the tinted window, then at the car again. He did not even check the list. He simply waved them through to the VIP entrance. "VIP treatment," Alina murmured. "Good start." They rolled up the curved drive. Gravel crunched beneath the wheels like applause. Scarlett could see guests turning to look. The vintage car was drawing attention. Phones were being raised. Photos were being taken. Perfect. The chauffeur opened her door with military precision. Scarlett stepped out. The whispers started immediately. Who is that? Look at that dress. Is she a celebrity? I have never seen her before. That car must have cost a fortune. Scarlett ascended the stone steps with Alina at her side. She did not hurry. She did not look around nervously. She moved like she belonged there, like she had always belonged there, like every other person present was simply furniture in her world. Her heels clicked against the ancient stone. Her dress caught the autumn sunlight. Her expression was serene, untouchable, regal. She was not here to blend in. She was here to be seen. The ceremony was held in the estate's chapel. Ancient stained glass that cast colored shadows on wooden pews that creaked with history, an altar decorated with white flowers that looked expensive but felt generic. Scarlett and Alina slipped in near the back, choosing seats with a clear view of the proceedings. Garrett stood at the altar in a tuxedo that was slightly too tight across the middle. He had gained weight since the divorce. His face was fuller. His hairline had retreated. He looked prosperous but soft, like a man who spent more time at expensive dinners than at the gym. He was smiling, that same smile that had charmed her once, that same smile that had promised her the world while stealing everything she had. He did not see her. He was too busy admiring himself. The bride entered to a string quartet playing Pachelbel's canon. Melody Sinclair Davies was exactly what Scarlett had expected. Young, perhaps 25. Blonde with the kind of highlights that cost $300 every 6 weeks. Nervous, her bouquet trembling slightly in her manicured hands. Her dress was enormous. A ball gown that took up 3 feet of space in every direction, covered in sequins and lace, and the desperate hope that more fabric meant more love. She looked like a wedding cake topper come to life. Her smile was uncertain as she walked down the aisle. Her eyes kept darting to her father in the front row as if seeking approval, seeking permission, seeking escape. Scarlett recognized that look. She had worn it herself once. She felt nothing watching this ceremony. Not jealousy, not anger, just a distant curiosity, like watching a nature documentary about a species she no longer had any connection to. The vows were generic. Love, honor, cherish. The same words spoken at a million weddings by a million couples who did not understand what they meant. When Garrett kissed his new wife, the applause was polite but restrained, scattered, the sound of obligation rather than joy. And then it was time for the reception. The ballroom was magnificent in the way that only old money could achieve. Crystal chandeliers that had hung there for 100 years. Gilded mirrors that reflected light and lies. Towering flower arrangements that reached toward the painted ceiling. A band played jazz standards with professional competence. Waiters circulated with champagne flutes and canapes on silver trays. Scarlett accepted a glass of champagne. She sipped it slowly, observing. The wine was domestic despite the French label on the bottle. The canapes were slightly cold. The staff looked underpaid and overworked. The room was filled with Boston's elite. Old money in conservative suits, new money in flashy accessories, politicians' wives in designer gowns they would wear once and forget, business executives in Italian leather shoes. She spotted Garrett across the room, working the crowd with desperate energy. He was laughing too loud at jokes that were not funny, shaking hands too eagerly with people who barely noticed him, gesturing expansively to the ballroom as if he owned it, which he definitely did not. He looked like a man trying to convince everyone, including himself, that he was still relevant, that he still mattered, that this wedding would save him from the consequences of his own choices. Incoming, Alina muttered. Scarlett turned. A woman in her 50s was approaching. Silver hair styled in an elegant bob, designer suit in dove gray, the sharp eyes of someone who missed nothing, calculated everything, and kept score. You must be Scarlett Ashworth. The woman extended her hand. Her grip was firm. Her smile was knowing. I am Victoria Sinclair, Melody's mother. Scarlett shook her hand. A pleasure. Victoria's smile did not reach her eyes. My husband has been talking about you all week. Something about a partnership that is going to revolutionize veterinary medicine. He is quite excited. We are excited about the possibilities. Scarlett replied smoothly. Reginald has been wonderful to work with. He showed me your diagnostic scanner. Victoria lowered her voice conspiratorially. Between us, it is the first business deal he has been genuinely excited about in years. He thinks you are going to change the entire industry. That is very kind. Victoria glanced toward Garrett, who was still working the room with desperate enthusiasm. Sweat was visible on his forehead, even from across the ballroom. I understand you and the groom have history. Scarlett's expression remained neutral. We were married briefly, years ago, another lifetime. Victoria's eyes sparkled with something like approval. He mentioned you might be here. He described you as an old friend who needed some help getting back on her feet. Scarlett laughed softly. The sound was musical, dangerous. That sounds like Garrett. Between us, Victoria leaned closer. He has been telling everyone that Reginald is investing $10 million in his company. A wedding gift to welcome him to the family. Is he? Victoria's smile was thin, cold. Reginald has not committed to anything, Garrett assumed. He tends to assume a great deal. Before Scarlett could respond, a commotion erupted near the entrance. Garrett was striding toward them. His face was flushed red. His eyes were fixed on Scarlett with an expression of shocked disbelief. His perfect facade was cracking. Scarlett, his voice cracked slightly. What are you doing here? You invited me. Scarlett raised her champagne glass in a small toast. Lovely ceremony. Garrett's eyes traveled over her dress, her jewelry, her companion. His expression shifted from confusion to suspicion to something that looked almost like fear. How did you get past the front gate? This is a private event. I was invited. Scarlett reminded him calmly. You sent me a note, something about free food. I meant, Garrett sputtered, his composure dissolving. I thought you would. Where did you get that dress? Scarlett smiled serenely. I have been doing some shopping. Victoria Sinclair was watching this exchange with visible interest. Garrett, darling, she interjected smoothly. I was just welcoming your old friend. She is quite impressive. Garrett stared at his new mother-in-law. You know her? Of course. Reginald has been talking about the Ashworth partnership for weeks. This is Scarlett Ashworth, CEO of Ashworth Veterinary Innovations. The color drained from Garrett's face. CEO of what? They make that diagnostic scanner Daddy is so excited about. Melody appeared at Garrett's elbow, champagne sloshing in her glass. He says it is going to be huge. Garrett turned to Scarlett. His mouth opened and closed several times. You started a company. Several years ago, Scarlett confirmed. A veterinary company. We specialize in diagnostic equipment and medication delivery systems. Our products are used in 47 countries. Garrett's eye twitched. He looked at Alina. And who is this? Alina Vance. Alina offered her hand. Chief Financial Officer, Ashworth Veterinary Innovations. Your CFO, Garrett repeated weakly. We just closed a $90 million deal with the Morrison Hospital Group. Alina added helpfully. It has been quite a year. Victoria Sinclair laughed delightedly. Garrett, you did not tell me your ex-wife was so successful. Garrett was sweating now, visible beads forming on his forehead. He grabbed Scarlett's elbow, pulling her slightly away from the group. His grip was too tight. How, his voice was a harsh whisper. How is this possible? You were nothing when I left. You were a vet assistant making $12 an hour. Scarlett removed his hand from her arm. Carefully, deliberately. I was also the woman you left with $40,000 in fraudulent debt. It took me 2 years to pay that off. And then I started building. This does not make sense. Garrett hissed. You were not smart enough to. I was not confident enough. Scarlett corrected him. There is a difference. You spent 3 years making sure I felt small. It took me a while to remember that I am not. A waiter approached with a tray of champagne. Garrett snatched 2 glasses and downed them in quick succession. Fine, he wiped his mouth. So you made some money. Good for you. But this is my wedding, my moment. You do not get to come here and make it about you. Scarlett glanced around the ballroom. Several guests were watching them with undisguised curiosity. I am not making anything about me. I am having champagne and making polite conversation. You are the one causing a scene. Garrett forced his face into a smile. We will talk about this later. No, Scarlett set down her empty glass. We will not. Congratulations on your wedding, Garrett. I hope it brings you everything you deserve. She turned and walked toward the bar. Elena fell into step beside her. That was delicious, Elena murmured, his face when Victoria said your name. The night is young, Scarlett replied. They found seats at a table near the dance floor. Other guests approached throughout the evening. Word had spread. The mysterious woman in red was someone important, someone connected to the Sinclair family through business. Scarlett answered questions gracefully. She deflected compliments modestly. She let people draw their own conclusions about why Garrett had invited his successful ex-wife to his wedding. Dinner was served, filet mignon and lobster. Scarlett noticed that the wine being poured was domestic despite the French label. The flower arrangements were mostly greenery with sparse actual blooms. The wedding looked expensive at first glance. Closer inspection revealed corners being cut everywhere. He is broke, Elena observed quietly. This whole thing is a credit card fantasy. Scarlett nodded. Garrett had always been better at appearing successful than actually being successful. The speeches began. Best man, maid of honor, generic platitudes about love and partnership. Then Garrett stood up. He was sweating heavily now. His tuxedo was wrinkled, but his voice boomed through the speakers with artificial confidence. Thank you all for being here tonight. He spread his arms wide. This is the happiest day of my life, not just because I married the most beautiful woman in the world. Melody giggled nervously. But because tonight marks the beginning of a new chapter. Garrett continued, a chapter of success, of partnership, of family. He looked toward the head table, where Reginald Sinclair sat with his wife. My new father-in-law, Reginald Sinclair, is a legend in the business world. And I am honored, truly honored, that he has agreed to become a partner in Thornwood Sports Management. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Scarlett watched Reginald's face. His expression was stone. Tonight, Garrett's voice cracked with emotion. Reginald will be announcing a $10 million investment in my company. This is more than business. This is family believing in family. He raised his glass to new beginnings. The crowd raised their glasses uncertainly. Scarlett noticed that Reginald Sinclair did not drink. Reginald Sinclair stood up slowly. The room went silent. Thank you, Garrett. Reginald's voice was calm, measured. That was a very enthusiastic speech. Garrett nodded eagerly. However, Reginald straightened his jacket. I am afraid there has been a misunderstanding. I have not agreed to invest in Thornwood Sports Management. The silence that followed was absolute. Garrett's smile froze. You said we would discuss it after the wedding. Discuss is not commit. Reginald's eyes were cold. I reviewed your company's financials this morning. Your biggest client left 3 months ago. You have outstanding debts to 6 vendors. Your projected earnings were significantly inflated. That is, Garrett stood up, his chair scraping loudly. Those numbers are. I had my CFO make some calls. Reginald continued. Your company is insolvent, Mr. Thornwood. Investing in it would be lighting money on fire. Melody looked at her new husband with dawning horror. Garrett, you said everything was fine. You said the investment was guaranteed. Nothing is ever guaranteed. Garrett snapped at her. Your father is just trying to. Trying to what? Reginald's voice hardened. Protect my daughter from a man who lies about his finances. Protect my family's money from a failing business. This is humiliating, Garrett hissed. You are humiliating me at my own wedding. You humiliated yourself. Reginald straightened his cufflinks. When you announced an investment I never agreed to make. The guests were frozen. Phones were appearing under tables. This would be on social media within minutes. However, Reginald turned his gaze towards Scarlett's table. I do have investment news to share tonight. Scarlett felt Alina tense beside her. Earlier this month, Sinclair Medical entered into a partnership with Ashworth Veterinary Innovations. Reginald's voice warmed noticeably. Their CEO, Scarlett Ashworth, has developed diagnostic technology that will revolutionize animal medicine. We are honored to be working with her. Every eye in the room turned to Scarlett. She stood gracefully. Her crimson dress caught the light. She looked like she was made of fire. Thank you, Reginald. Her voice carried clearly through the silent ballroom. We are excited about the partnership. Garrett stared at her. His mouth hung open. His face had gone from red to white to gray. He pointed at Scarlett. You did this. You planned this. I did not plan anything. Scarlett replied calmly. I accepted an invitation to a wedding. You are the one who announced imaginary investments. You are trying to destroy me. Garrett, Scarlett's voice softened, almost pitying. I have not thought about you in years. I have been too busy building something real. Melody burst into tears. My wedding is ruined. Daddy, do something. The something Reginald did was signal to security. 2 large men in black suits appeared at Garrett's elbows. Perhaps you should step outside, Reginald suggested. Get some air. You cannot throw me out of my own wedding. It is my estate, Reginald reminded him. And that prenuptial agreement your lawyer thought was so clever. It has a fraud clause. If you misrepresented your finances, which you clearly did, this marriage can be annulled by morning. Garrett looked around wildly, at his crying bride, at his furious new in-laws, at the sea of guests who were openly filming the disaster. His eyes landed on Scarlett. This is not over. Actually, Scarlett picked up her champagne glass. I think it is. Security escorted Garrett out through a side door. His protests echoed briefly, then faded. The band launched into an upbeat jazz number. Slowly, awkwardly, guests began to move again. Conversations resumed in hushed, excited tones. Alina appeared at Scarlett's elbow with a fresh glass of champagne. That, Alina said reverently, was the most satisfying thing I have ever witnessed. I did not plan for it to happen like this. I know, Alina grinned. That is what makes it perfect. He destroyed himself, you just watched. Victoria Sinclair approached them. Ms. Ashworth. Victoria's voice was warm. I owe you an apology. I had no idea my son-in-law was. A fraud, Scarlett supplied. Victoria winced. I was going to say overconfident, but yes. She touched Scarlett's arm. Reginald would like to speak with you. Scarlett followed Victoria to a private study off the main ballroom. Reginald Sinclair was standing by the fireplace, a glass of whiskey in his hand. Ms. Ashworth, he gestured to a leather chair. Please. Scarlett sat. The fire crackled softly. I understand Garrett was your ex-husband. Years ago, Scarlett confirmed. He left me with significant debt and no resources. I rebuilt from nothing. Reginald nodded slowly. I did my research after our first meeting. I know what he did to you, the forged signatures, the hidden accounts. He swirled his whiskey. I also know you never pressed charges. It would have taken years. Scarlett shrugged. I did not have time for revenge. I had a company to build. Reginald studied her for a long moment. Most people in your position would have come here tonight looking for blood. I came here tonight because he invited me. Scarlett met his eyes steadily. I did not plan what happened. I did not orchestrate his humiliation. He did that to himself. I believe you. Reginald set down his glass, which is why I want to expand our partnership. Expand it. Your diagnostic scanner is impressive, but I have been looking at your medication delivery systems, the patent applications, the clinical trials. He leaned forward. I want exclusive distribution rights for all Ashworth products, North America and Europe. Scarlett's heart rate increased slightly. She kept her expression neutral. That is a significant commitment. I am prepared to make a significant investment. Reginald named a figure that made Alina, standing quietly by the door, audibly gasp. Scarlett considered for a moment. Exclusive distribution would mean giving up some control, but it would also mean resources she could not access alone. It would mean her products reaching clinics that currently could not afford them. It would mean saving more animals, which was the whole point. I will need to review the terms with my team. Of course, Reginald smiled for the first time all evening. But I think we can make this work. You are exactly the kind of partner I have been looking for. Someone who builds real value instead of selling smoke. He stood and extended his hand. Scarlett shook it. Welcome to the family, Ms. Ashworth. The business family, anyway. He glanced toward the door. The actual family seems to be imploding. Scarlett laughed. The sound surprised her. It was genuine. They returned to the reception. The mood had shifted dramatically. Half the guests had left. The remaining half were clustered in groups, gossiping intensely. Melody had disappeared, presumably to cry somewhere private. The band was playing to a mostly empty dance floor. Alina appeared with their coats. Time to go. I think so. Scarlett looked around the ballroom one last time. The chandelier light caught the abandoned champagne glasses, the wilting flowers, the scattered napkins. A wedding that had become a wake. Garrett was nowhere to be seen. According to whispered reports, he had been escorted off the property entirely. His credit card had been declined when he tried to order an Uber. He was last seen walking down the estate's private road in his now-ruined tuxedo. The vintage Rolls-Royce was waiting at the front entrance. The chauffeur opened the door. Scarlett settled into the leather seat. Alina slid in beside her. So Alina pulled out her phone. Reginald's offer. Are you going to take it? I am going to negotiate. Scarlett watched the estate disappear in the rearview mirror. But yes, it is too good to pass up. You know what this means? Alina's eyes were bright. Ashworth Veterinary Innovations is about to become the biggest player in the industry. You are going to be in every business magazine. Garrett is going to see your face everywhere. Scarlett considered this. For 5 years, she had deliberately stayed invisible. She had let her work speak for itself. She had avoided the spotlight because some part of her still expected Garrett to appear and tear it all down. But Garrett was finished now, not because of anything she had done, but because lies eventually collapse under their own weight. He had built his life on smoke and promises. She had built hers on actual work. Maybe it is time to stop hiding, Scarlett said quietly. The car carried them through the dark New England roads, away from the wreckage of Garrett's ambitions and toward something new. 6 months later, Scarlett stood on the stage of the National Veterinary Conference in San Diego. 2,000 professionals filled the auditorium. Cameras broadcast her face to screens around the world. She was announcing the Ashworth-Sinclair line of diagnostic equipment, the technology that would make comprehensive health scans affordable for clinics of all sizes, the technology that would save countless animals. The applause was thunderous. After the presentation, reporters surrounded her. Questions about the technology, questions about the partnership, questions about her remarkable rise from obscurity to industry leader. One reporter, bolder than the rest, asked about Garrett Thornwood. "I understand your ex-husband's company recently filed for bankruptcy." Scarlett paused. She could have said something cutting. She could have enjoyed the moment of triumph. But she found that the anger was gone. The hurt was gone. Garrett was just a footnote now, a cautionary tale that had ceased to be relevant to her story. "I wish him well," Scarlett said simply. "We all have our own paths." She moved on to the next question. That evening, she had dinner with Alina and Reginald to celebrate the launch. They ate at a restaurant overlooking the Pacific Ocean. The sun set in shades of gold and crimson. "I have something for you." Alina pulled a small box from her purse. Scarlett opened it. Inside was a simple silver bracelet. Engraved on the inside were the words she built her own empire. "It is cheesy," Alina admitted, "but you deserved something to mark the occasion." Scarlett clasped the bracelet around her wrist. It caught the fading sunlight. "Thank you," her voice was thick, "both of you, for believing in me when I could not believe in myself." Reginald raised his glass. "To Ashworth Veterinary Innovations. To partnerships built on trust instead of lies. To futures earned, not stolen." They clinked glasses. Scarlett looked out at the ocean. Somewhere out there, Garrett was probably nursing his wounds, blaming everyone but himself for his failures. Somewhere out there, the girl she used to be was still crying on a kitchen floor, wondering if she would ever escape. But that girl had escaped. That girl had built an empire. That girl had walked into her ex-husband's wedding wearing fire and walked out holding the future. Some endings were also beginnings. Scarlett smiled and drank her champagne. It tasted like victory. The next morning, Scarlett received a text from an unknown number. "I heard about the conference. Congratulations. You deserved every bit of success. I am sorry for everything. Truly, G." She stared at the message for a long moment. Then she blocked the number and went back to work. There were animals to save, clinics to supply, a world to change. Garrett Thornwood was part of her story, but he would never be the ending. Scarlett Ashworth had written her own ending. And it was magnificent.